and welcome to In This Corner of the podcast, a Buck 37, featuring boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, and we have one to recap here today. Boxing's greatest memories and moments. We have something special for that, and we do it all with boxing expert, historian, CompuBox counter, author, writer, one hell of a nice dude, Lee Groves. How you doing, Lee?
Doing well, Smitty. How about yourself?
Pretty good. And I mentioned, so you can help me with this tease before we get into some of these recaps. What are we gonna? What in terms of history, our memories and moments? Tell the folks what they can look forward to in our last segment.
Well, on the occasion of Bivol versus Beterbiev being the first undisputed light heavyweight title fight in 41 years, we're going to go back to that fight in 1983 when Michael Spinks and Dwight Qawi competed for all the light heavyweight hardware that was available at the time. It was a memorable fight in its own right, and we're going to go over that.
Okay.
You have some ties to it as well, which we'll go into.
And ladies and gentlemen, believe me, we will dissect, break down, and operate on the Beterbiev decision victory over Bivol. Of course, last week we had our preview show with Tommy Yankello, with Regis Prograis, with Joe Smith, and we all chimed in. And so we'll go over all of that and have our Lee and I's opinions on what we saw Saturday from Saudi Arabia. However, before we get to that, we got some other stuff to get to, so get to it.
I got to say, October 12th through October 14th provided the boxing world with an incredible schedule of world title contests. During the wee hours of October 12th in the U.S., former WBC light flyweight champion Masamichi Ibuki became the new IBF champ at 108 by stopping South Africa's Sivanathi Nontshinga in round 9. And then on the undercard of the Beterbiev-Bivol show, Jayo Pataya stopped Jack Massey in round 6 to keep his IBF cruiserweight title. And Sky Nicholson kept her WBC featherweight belt with a shutout unanimous decision against Raven Chapman. Other notable fights on the Saudi Arabia show included Chris Eubank Jr. stopping Camille Sharameta in round 7, Ben Whitaker and Liam Cameron fighting to a rather bizarre technical draw after Whitaker appeared to injure his ankle when both men flipped over the top rope and out of the ring. And Fabio Wardley scored a first-round knockout over the man with whom he drew in March, Fraser Clark. The knockout blow apparently fractured Clark's jaw in 3 places and left a nasty dent on the side of the head. But following surgery, he is expected to make a full recovery. And returning to the world title parade, Tokyo played host to an incredible 7 championship fights in 2 days. On October 13th, 2-time WBC light flyweight champion Kenshiro Teraji spectacularly outboxed Christopher Rosales before stopping him in round 11 to win the vacant WBC flyweight title. Seijo Yuri Akui retained his WBA flyweight title with a hard-fought split decision against 8th-ranked Thanachai Charonfak. And meanwhile, Shokichi Iwata won the vacant WBO 108-pound belt with a third-round knockout over the previously undefeated Jairo Noriega. But Takuma Inoue, the younger brother of pound-for-pound superstar Naoya Inoue, lost the WBA bantamweight title to countryman Seiya Tsutsumi by a clear unanimous decision. And then we go to the following day, October 14th.
By the way, was that in a way, would that be considered an upset, his brother losing in that fight? Was that an upset, would you say?
It was a mild upset, but it was also a correct decision. The aggression, the work rate, everything was working for Tsutsumi. Okay. He deserved to win. And then the following day, the Ariake Arena in Tokyo, which hosted the other title fights, hosted another 3 title matches. Anthony Olaswaga kept his WBO flyweight belt with a first-round no contest against former belt holder Jonathan Gonzalez, whose cut over the left eye was deemed too severe to continue, while South Africa's Phumelele Kafu dethroned Kosei Tanaka by split decision and became the new WBO super flyweight champion. And finally, in the main event, Junto Nakatani retained his WBC bantamweight title for the second time with a sixth-round TKO over Thailand's Tasana Salapat, who entered this bout with an incredible record of 76-1 with 53 knockouts. I'll say it right here. If anyone can beat Naoya Inoue, it is this man. He is a tall lefty. He's got great long-range skills. He has genuine one-punch KO power. And at age 26, he's 5 years younger than the monster. Let's hope that fight happens sometime next year. And then we go to the one preview that we're going to go over, and that's Bakhram Murtazaliev defending his IBF super welterweight belt against Tim Tszyu in the main event of today's Amazon Prime stream. Tszyu is going to be returning to the ring for the first time since losing his WBO belt to Sebastian Fundora in March. Now, Tszyu had been scheduled to fight Virgil Ortiz on August 3rd, but the fight was called off because of the horrifying cut he suffered against Fundora. It didn't fully heal. This should be an excellent fight because Murtazaliev won't be an easy out. He has high work rate, an excellent amateur pedigree. He's taller and rangier than Tszyu, and he's very, very disciplined. However, Tszyu has fought the better opposition, and he showed Fundora that he can fight well against tall opponents. I'm picking Tszyu on points, but it's not going to be easy. And then finally today, we'll also see the IBF super middleweight title vacancy. They stripped Canelo of that belt. As number one contender William Scull will fight second-ranked Vladimir Shishkin in Scull's adopted home country of Germany. Both men are undefeated. Both men are skilled. It's a tough fight to pick, but I'm picking Scull on points.
All right. Well, great job there of getting us totally abreast of what's going on in pugilism all over the world there, especially with mention to Japan. All right. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we got stuff to say, because it's Smitty and Lee says. Right now I says break, and we'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner of the podcast, $137 with Lee Groves. Lee, last week we spent nearly the entire program breaking down Beterbiev, Bivol for supremacy, undisputed stuff at $175. The fight turned out to be a pretty damn good one. Beterbiev wins the majority decision. And I asked you to put together a segment for us where we can both go back and forth. So I'll let you lead and take the lead in it, and I will chime in where you want me to.
So the first topic is just the overall impression of the fight. And you know, outside of the final result, I picked Bivol, and so did you. I picked Bivol to win on points. And the fight pretty much went the way I thought that it would. Bivol dominated the early rounds with his boxing skills. Beterbiev controlled the late rounds, with his power and his aggression. It went into the late rounds and actually went the distance. I thought the fight would go the distance. Both men managed to sting the other one at times, and I think it was the 50-50 fight that most thought that it would be. It wasn't a classic in terms of rock'em sock'em action, but it was a demonstration of how skilled both men really are. And it really, I think, built the foundation for an attractive rematch. And for guys like us, who really look closely at the skills and the overall atmosphere of what was going on in the ring, I thought it was a very good watch. Mm-hmm. One aspect of the fight, I think, that surprised both of us was Bivol's disappearing jab. Yeah. He started out strong with the jab, but as the fight went on, it seemed to grow less and less. And in looking at the CompuBox stats, you brought that up. You texted that to me
Yeah.
during the fight.
Yeah.
Where's his jab?
Jab.
And
Well, and
the
where
CompuBox
basically
stats,
what I said is, where did it go? I think it was it seemed like around round 5 or 6 is when he didn't abandon it, but I thought was clearly holding it back and doing other stuff, and that was letting Beterbiev get inside closer. But I think, well, you have the statistics, so we'll see if
yeah,
I was right about that.
you are correct. In the first 2 rounds, Bivol threw 34 and 35 jabs. That's pretty much on par with what he does. But then starting in the 3rd round, it dropped to 27, 21, 18, 16, 18, 18, 22, 14, 20, and 12. So he went from 34 in the 1st round to 12 in the last round. And that really allowed Beterbiev to close the gap. It made it much easier for him to close the gap and do really solid business.
Yeah. You know, we were talking the other day, you had somebody said something about the different lines of defenses, and they left out the jab completely. And I told you that, in my opinion, the jab, whether it be the left jab, if you're orthodox, or if you're southpaw, the right jab, the jab is the first line of defense, and it can be the last line of defense. And I think I'll say it, just that, if Bivol had kept up close to that pace that you indicated that he did in the first 3 or 4 rounds, he would have made it a pretty clear-cut decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's part of the ring generalship argument. I think that you did say that Bivol was pretty much doing more of what he wanted to do, but Beterbiev made it a debatable point.
Yeah,
Correct?
if you go by, again, my overall impression was, you said much of what I agree, but the bottom line was, and we'll get into this, the 4 criteria: clean, hard punching, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, defense, and then my last one, who is doing more of what they went in there to do. Beterbiev, the perception was, if he was going to get it done, it would be by breaking down, busting up, probably knocking down, and maybe even stopping Bivol, as he had done with his prior 20 fights. For Bivol, it would have been box his way to a victory. Obviously, Beterbiev did do some of that, but who did more of what they wanted to do was Bivol. He, boxed, he moved well. He really never was in trouble on the verge of going down. He certainly got hit some, and we'll get to one real dramatic moment where he kind of got a little greedy when he was landing combinations. But overall, and again, my scorecard I have here, I had it 116, 114 for Bivol. I had, of course, 2 even rounds in the fight. I had the last round even, and I had I think it was the 7th round even. So it obviously a close fight either way, but I don't think anybody can argue that the person who was doing more of throughout the 12 rounds was Bivol. I say that, but then, the judges saw it another way.
Of course.
Anyway.
And my scorecard, I had the fight scored 114, 114. I had Bivol winning each of the first 5 rounds. Beterbiev winning 6 through 8. Bivol winning the 9th round, and Beterbiev sweeping 10, 11, and 12. And you made mention of the fact that you scored 2 even rounds. Now, in today's conventional wisdom, even rounds is rather frowned upon. But you are old school in that you do allow for even rounds, and you are very strongly supportive of scoring even rounds. Explain.
I mean, well, again, to say to somebody that you can't score an even round is hogwash, and it's BS. I mean, in every other sport, there can be a tie at the end of the first quarter, a tie at halftime. There can be ties because the team scored the same amount. In boxing, it doesn't have to be that each fighter threw and landed the exact amount, but it's just sometimes a guy will control two of the criteria, or maybe somebody will really finish strongly enough and land some really great shots towards the end. And that makes it an even round. I mean, there's so many different reasons why. I don't know when and where and who ever came up with you can't have an even round. I know you mentioned to me several times about a couple of outlier cases where judges took the easy route and scored like 10 rounds even. That's ridiculous as well. But certainly in a fight like this, where, I mean, rather than side with one or the other, the round just as even. Maybe Bivol started first half of the round doing a great job, landing the jab, moving around slowly but surely. The second half of the round, Beterbiev moved in and landed some great body shots, and they both finished with a fury, hence the 10-10 round. I mean, there's no reason to say, well, I got to give it to somebody because some judge at a seminar told me I have to do that. That same judge, probably some old white guy that's never boxed in his life, that doesn't even know what ring generalship means, is the one telling everybody you can't score a round like that. And again, I'm not going to name drop here, but we know of a Hall of Fame judge that did not know what ring generalship meant. Told me as much. So, and that is such an important criteria that I honestly believe, Lee, that ring generalship and defense are just ignored because, and there was a thing you and I were talking about where there was something that, Beterbiev taking away the jab, that proves the aggression part. But then there's points where Beterbiev not being able to do certain things, power punches and what have you, is because of the tremendous Bivol defense, whether it be with his legs, with his upper body, mostly with his legs and whatever. So that's where ring generalship kind of fits in the entire round and the entire fight. Ring generalship is so important. I just think it's not even misunderstood. It's just ignored by most of the current judges. We'll get one of them on. You can pick whoever you want. It'll probably be some old white guy that's never boxed before. Maybe it'll be an old black guy that's never fought before. But the reason I say that is if they don't go to the gym and know about these nuances, Lee, how do they implement them into their scoring? But go ahead.
By the way, so there are a couple of points that kind of back up what you've been saying.
By the way, everybody's yelling at the thing now saying, Smitty, you're the oldest white guy we see on here. So. But I'm an old white guy that still knows how to box.
Yeah. But from a statistical standpoint, there are a couple of things that really back up what you're saying. In my world, when I assess the numbers, if there is a round in which the fighters are separated by 3 or fewer total connects, that is a swing round. That's something that a round that could go either way. 6 of the 12 rounds in this fight, they were separated by 3 or fewer connects.
What a great stat.
Okay. So there you go. And you could use the stats from this particular fight to explain the 4 criterion that judges uses. The clean punching. Okay, Bivol led 142 to 137 in total connects. And he was more accurate in all 3 phases by significant margins. So based on that, you could say Bivol was the cleaner puncher. Effective aggressiveness. Beterbiev led Bivol 90 to 84 in landed power shots. He landed more of them, and he landed them with more impact. Now, CompuBox doesn't measure impact, but the number of power punches landed makes a significant dent when it comes to judging rounds. Ring generalship. Now, conventional wisdom going into the fight was that if Bivol could get Beterbiev into a jabbing contest, he would be fighting his fight. But if Beterbiev could get Bivol into a trading war, he would be forcing Bivol to fight his fight. Well, the stats indicated that jabs made up 55% of Beterbiev's total output and 60% of Bivol's. That's normal for Bivol. That's not so normal for Beterbiev. And what that tells me is what you said. Bivol was the better ring general, and therefore he should get credit for ring generalship. And then defense. Right there, you can go to the stats and see the accuracy of both men. Bivol was the better defender because he only allowed 20% of Beterbiev's overall punches to connect and 29% of his power shots. Bivol landed 34% overall and 50% of his power shots. So the better defender by a mile is Bivol. Yeah. And you could say that using the judging criterion and correlating them with the stats, Bivol led 3-1 in the 4 scoring criteria. Right. And that's why there seems to be so much angst on social media over the final result.
And having said that.
And finally, okay. I have one more thing. Finally, while CompuBox was never intended as a judging tool, I have found that there is a strong correlation between well-judged fights and the round-by-round breakdown of total connects. And here, Beterbiev led 6-5-1 in that breakdown. And most people believe that the fight should have been judged 7-5 either way or a draw.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know what, I'm so sick of this thing, robbery. It was not a robbery either way. 116, 112, which one judge had it, is a little off, only because that means that Bivol would have only won 4 rounds. And he probably won the first 4 rounds. And that would mean that he didn't win anything else the rest of the fight, which is hogwash. So that, but again, that could just be like mine, you know, if having a 10, having a couple 10-10s, if a couple of mine go the other way and I lean towards Beterbiev, well, I would have had the fight then a draw, you know. So it wasn't a robbery by any stretch. I thought I feel that Bivol should have been awarded the decision, but looking ahead and looking towards a rematch, I think the guy that has more upside with what he can do in that rematch would be Bivol, because we already alluded to the fact that he didn't abandon the jab, but he cut way back on it. If he just gets that in his head to let that hand go, round 6 through 12, and doesn't use the high guard and doesn't do, I forgot what round it was, maybe 7, when he really threw about a 20-punch combination, got a little greedy, came forward, got nailed in the complexion of the fight. I forgot what round that was.
Round 7.
Okay. And that was when he was actually hurt more than at any other time during the fight, even when he was on the ropes, Bivol, because he walked into something and, Beterbiev's a hell of a puncher. So there's more room for improvement, in my opinion, for Bivol. I don't think Beterbiev at his age, he's going to be 40 years old. He's, a lot of atrophy. He can't fight any better than he did, and he's not going to knock Bivol out in a rematch. So for me, the rematch would be similar, but more decisive, and definitely would go the other way. Bivol would win. That's my opinion.
Yeah, both of us sense that while Beterbiev fought well, he was markedly slower. He looked like there was some ring rust there. He eventually worked it out in the later rounds as he controlled the later rounds. But, if they have the rematch 6 months down the line, that's 6 months older for Beterbiev. And, Bivol is still 33, almost 34 years old. Beterbiev will be 40. And age, attrition, it eventually catches up with all of us. But this also brings, talking about the decision, what if this fight had been a 15-rounder? We made the suggestion that fights like this, just 4-bout unification fights between the 2 best in the division, why not have it at 15 rounds? Because Amanda Serrano, in a way, opened the door to this. with her 12 rounds, 3 minutes per round crusade. She showed that if she agrees to it, her opponent agrees to it, the commissions agree to it, and the sanctioning bodies agree to it, you can establish special rounds and distances. Look at the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. That's only going to be 2-minute rounds over 8, but it's still an official fight for the men. So why not, under special circumstances, have these super fights, like say Spence and Crawford, when we thought that it was a 50-50 fight. That could have been a 15-rounder.
Well, even the rematch with Fury and Usyk, if they could make that, 15-round. And I think boxing fans would love it. It would be boxing finally doing something that all the other sports do, add or subtract some things from the past, or add some things for the future, or take some chances. Not, now granted, you got to be careful because of the fighter's health, but these are the elite of the elitist. When we have a unification or undisputed special fight, the fans would absolutely love it. 15 rounds went on for years and years and years and produced classics like one we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. I agree with you. There were a couple of other quick things you wanted to cover in this segment, though, so I'll lay out and let you get to those.
So one of the things that really struck me was this was an action-packed fight, and yet the crowd in Saudi Arabia was so quiet. It was almost like they didn't know what they were watching.
Kind of like Tyson and Buster Douglas.
Very, very much so. And I think Jim Lampley during the broadcast made mention of that in Tokyo. Yeah. If this was in Las Vegas or anywhere else in the world, the crowd would be going wild about this upset that is unfolding before them. But instead, because of the way things are in that locale, it was very quiet, and I think it took away from the atmosphere.
Yeah. And one other thing, let's commend both fighters for fighting each other, for fighting the way they did, and for the sportsmanship that they demonstrated before the fight and after the fight. Two classy dudes. You didn't have all the trash talking BS and all the stare downs and garbage. You had the two best dudes at $175 demonstrating, along with greatness inside the squared circle. They're classy dudes, and they treated each other and the sport and the fans with the respect that everybody deserves.
Very much so. And that was not the only fight in which there was great sportsmanship. The Fabio Wardley-Frazier Clark match, both which wished each other well. Clark suffered the great injury and said that it was a pleasure to be in the ring with Wardley for 13 rounds, and Wardley reciprocated. Yeah. And then after Nanshinga, he was the losing fighter. He said that the best man won, that he will remain humble and down to earth and teachable, and that he would work hard to become a 3-time champion. He handled the loss with as much grace as anybody could ask for. So while we criticize the pushing and the shoving and the nasty talk and all of the stuff that we criticize, there are plenty of boxers who behave like gentlemen and ladies, and they should be praised for it. And so
not enough of them, though, and hopefully they'll learn from the ones that we just mentioned. All right, I got a question for you before we go to a break, Lee.
Okay.
Is your dentist too expensive?
Darn right, the prices are too
and that's
high.
Why we're going to hustle you over to Dr. Nam Phan. Of course, he's here in Las Vegas on East Flamingo Road at 2121 East Flamingo Road. That phone number is 702-637-9168. He specializes with expertise in full mouth cosmetic, veneers, crowns, dental implants, something he's doing for Smitty, extractions, and sedation. I found out about that sedation. He's consistently helped patients achieve their ideal smiles by offering a range of affordable financial options tailored to their needs. He's also in New York, New Jersey, and California, along with being here in Las Vegas. Dr. Nam Phan, again, that phone number, 702-637-9168. Yeah, I'm looking pretty. Pretty Smitty from the Magic City. I got a towel here that says that
Smitty.
from my old football days. It's definitely time for a break. We're going to come back and talk about something that was artistic brutality. Two great light heavyweights, all-timers, Michael Spinks, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, 15 rounds. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back, final segment in this corner, the podcast. Coming up in a couple of weeks, a show that's very special for me. And we're going to do a lot of these different types of shows with different types of athletes and celebrities and things of that nature. But this one will be personal because we'll be joined by the great Hall of Fame wide receiver for Ohio State, of course, Cleveland Browns, unbeaten Miami Dolphins. Paul Warfield will join us in a few weeks, and I really look forward to that. And you're going to find out about Lee's football expertise when we do that show. I know you're looking forward to talking with you. And Paul have something in common.
Yes, we were born on November 28th, a few years apart, but we share a birthday.
Yes, you do. And you're both great guys. And on that, let's talk about a great matchup of fighters. Well, I'll let you take it away. Memories and moments.
Well, I said it at the top of the show when we were previewing this. Last week's match between Beterbiev and Bivol crowned the first undisputed light heavyweight champion of the four-belt era, and also crowned the first man to hold all the major available hardware since March 18th, 1983, 41 years ago, when WBA champion Michael Spinks outpointed WBC counterpart Dwight Muhammad Qawi over 15 rounds inside the convention center in Atlantic City. Now, this was a very highly anticipated fight, and unlike Beterbiev and Bivol, it didn't take 7 years to make. Spinks was 22-0 with 16 knockouts. He was defending the WBA belt for the sixth time, while Qawi, who was also known as Dwight Braxton, was 19-1-1 with 12 knockouts, and he was risking his WBC belt for the third time. At 5'6 3/4, Qawi was the shortest light heavyweight champion in history, while Spinks at 6'2 was among the tallest. Once the bell sounded, Spinks used his jab to pile up points and to keep Qawi at a safe distance. But by round 5, Qawi started to close the gap. He began using his own jab, and he started to land more often. Qawi scored the fight's only knockdown in round 8 with a right to the belly, which happened to land at the same time that he had his foot on top of Spinks, so that helped the fall a little bit. But Spinks regained his equilibrium. He boxed his way to the unanimous decision victory. Now, Smitty, what are your memories of the fight as well as of Spinks and Qawi? You knew both guys really well. In fact, you had them on your show.
You know, when I was watching some of the clips from Michael on In This Corner, my television show, the first clip that popped up was just him talking about we were during a break though, but he was talking about the importance of the jab and how it's by far the most important punch. And, you know, he was the taller guy. Everybody was taller than Qawi, but Qawi knew how to use his lack of height. He accentuated the negative and made it a positive. He also was a great boxer. I remember when we spent time together in Canastota, we did the show and the in-ring, and you're looking at some shots from that in-ring segment. Of course, that, cross-handed style, but he had the ability to time jabs. And even though he was always the shorter guy and had the less reach, he could time it. He told me it was about timing and then setting up other stuff. And he was also built like a little fire hydrant, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And as for Michael, he was hell of a boxer, a little bit just a little bit awkward, but in a good way, and made him difficult to remember. He only lost one fight, and if I recall correctly, that was to a guy named Mike Tyson that he probably, but he also won the heavyweight championship, beating a guy named Larry Holmes. So
Twice.
It was I do think more of Qawi against Holyfield, that fight, more so than this one. Holyfield's told me on a few occasions that fight with Qawi was his toughest fight ever. And I think Qawi might have told me the same thing. But this was a classic 15 rounds, And by the way, with all respect to Bivol and Beterbiev, both of these guys, Michael and Dwight Muhammad, in my opinion, would beat both of those guys. Just in my opinion, just more to their game, more nuance. And even though Bivol is a hell of a boxer, the Russian style, he's a little stiff, and Beterbiev is very stiff, even though he's fantastic. We don't have a whole show for me to get into this, but I know Tommy Yankello agrees with me on that. The Qawi, and there was so much nuance to his game, and the same with Spinks. But man, that was a classic. I don't remember scoring it, but I think they got it right. I think Spinks edged it, don't you?
He did. He was the superior ring general, and the conventional wisdom going into this fight was that Spinks was not a guy who listened to his corner all the time. And here, Eddie Futch came up with a plan, and Spinks implemented it to a T, even almost to a fault sometimes. But he got the job done. He listened to Eddie. He won the championship. Dwight did the best that he could, but he just couldn't get past that jab. And Michael Spinks made it that difficult for him to get to that jab. But Dwight Muhammad Qawi was a tremendous fighter. And as aggressive as he was, he always fancied himself as a counterpuncher.
Yeah.
He was a guy who slipped punches extremely well. He landed these crisp, short, accurate combinations.
He would see a lot. He would see a lot in that, not necessarily caught kind of a peekaboo, but the cross hand. And sometimes he would do this thing where he'd go here, he would go here, and then roll up and then come over, and you can't see it coming because you're looking at here and here. Then he goes here, then he goes here, and then he rolls, bam. And it's a shot that, would hit you kind of like what Joe Smith said he was getting hit by Beterbiev with that shot on the side of the head. But he could also box, Hall of Famer, and Michael Spinks on the short list of the greatest light heavyweights of all time. I think you'd agree with that.
Definitely.
With Bob Foster and Archie Moore, and people say Ezzard Charles because if he had fought at that, but those guys. So yeah, really, really good stuff there. And I think we should let Michael take us out of here, unless you got something else.
I do have one more other thing.
Okay.
Another interesting note. When Qawi went up to cruiserweight, he fought Michael's brother Leon.
Yes.
Defended the championship, and he dominated the fight, scored a TKO victory, looked very good. If you want to take a look at Dwight Muhammad Qawi at his best, look at his two fights with Matthew Saad Muhammad and the fight against Leon Spinks. He was tremendous.
Yes, he was. And so was, of course, Michael, who, when we sat down and did the show, unfortunately, we weren't able to do it in ring. I think he had an injury at the time. While we showed up with a cane, and I said, there's no way we're going to be able to. And he got in there, and as soon as we got in the ring, he started doing his thing, his Camden Jersey thing. But as for Michael, he got a little, poignant and emotional when I asked him how he wanted to be remembered as a fighter and a man. And we'll let Michael take us out of here. In this corner, the podcast 137. He's Lee Groves. I'm Smitty. Michael Spinks, take us out of here. How does Michael Spinks want to be remembered as a fighter, but more importantly as a man?
I got on a good foot, and I had a very, very tough mother. Oh, sweetest woman you ever, I love my mom. She was very instrumental in my life and me making a change and to fight harder for myself. Fight harder and doing. She used to always say, "Don't do nothing." She wouldn't. When I would go, I said, "Mom, I'm going outside." She said, "Well, okay, don't do nothing I wouldn't do." And I was always take that, with a grain of salt. Yeah, she manned her ship. She reared her kids as best she could. No father. And they say that that's that junk that a woman can't raise a man, a boy to be a man. I'm a living example. I didn't have no father. He wasn't there. I had a father, but he wasn't there. And my mother was just as tough as any man, if not tougher. And she was very instrumental in my life. And she was just, the best woman I've met in my life.
Well, they say if there's ever a role model in boxing, I think that this guy right here certainly, could be one of them. Thanks, champ.
No problem. Thank you, man.